is going to be the official first part of our new series about capitalist propaganda and how we may have been misled about China. I want to be clear that this is so incredibly nuanced. I'm going to source credible numbers from verified American sources that have access to that back-end information, and I'm going to be citing them. For that reason, we're speaking in averages. Real estate in Shanghai or New York City is not going to be anywhere near as affordable as real estate in Kansas, right? We're taking all of this in context. The purpose of this is to paint a high-level, broad picture for you guys, because once we get down to the bottom of it and you start seeing how these numbers line up, you're going to realize that a couple $1,000s here and there is not going to be enough to save our American asses. Perhaps the most important thing that we need to understand before we jump into numbers is the cultural differences between Americans and Chinese people, because in America, we have a very individualistic meritocracy where we believe it's okay to extort people if we are the Michael Jordan of capitalism, which I've heard before. It's so fucking stupid. And over in China, they care about community and family. I will remind my whataboutism American viewers that this is a TikTok video and not a PhD level dissertation. So if that's what you're looking for, please go look elsewhere. The comment section of the last video had a lot of great exchanges, including that of Chinese people and people who live in China, who are from America. All of that is welcome here. I would love to hear it. I'm here to learn from you guys too. Propaganda loves to feed us this narrative about how much more rich we are than the people of China. So let's take a look. According to Forbes magazine, in 2021, which was the last year that Beijing National Bureau of Statistics released the data, we can look at the average salary of a Chinese worker versus an American worker. It's worth noting that in this scenario, the average American worker is making 3.5 times their Chinese counterpart, which is already a far reduction over the 6.5 times from the 10 years prior to that. In order to understand the context of their local domestic buying power with their currency, we're going to look at the PPP, the purchase power parity. This gets lost in the conversation every time, and it's so important because our currencies inherently hold different values domestically. The PPP in China is 2.04 times the nominal value, which means that on average, Chinese consumers get about twice the purchasing power domestically compared to the nominal exchange rate. In other words, in China, the yuan has more domestic spending power than the US dollar has within America. Yikes. Yahoo Finance gives us the average price per meter in China versus America, and below that I'll go ahead and translate that to square feet. In China, they have smaller homes, and they often live multi-generationally. So this is a good point for me to sort of pause on and explain one of those things that's actually better in America, at least in my opinion. I like my space, personally. Who knows, if I was raised in China, maybe I'd feel differently. They average 646 square foot per dwelling, and the real estate they hold there, city, it's almost always going to be a condo. So that's basically a condo is what we're describing. In America, the average home size is 2,164 square feet, which is a single-family residential detached home, which is the standard in America. I went ahead and did that math for us. I'm going to put these numbers up here. And it's worth noting that the average American home price, based on these numbers, is 3.64 times higher than the average Chinese home, which actually lines up perfectly with that income disparity that we saw originally, right? So we make 3.5 times more than they do, but we're also paying 3.6 times more for our housing. So that seems consistent. In talking about upfront costs, this is actually where America is the clear winner in terms of being able to get into housing. It's way more affordable to get into housing in America. You can get into a house in America for as little as 0% down depending on the loan program. I'm absolutely game to talk more about financing in America and how this all works, but that's going to have to be another video. China recently reduced their down payment amount from 30% to 15% for first-time home buyers. So that is what we're going to use as our standardized measurement for calculating everything. So I did the math for us, and those numbers are up here for you. I want to pause on this for just a second and talk about the cultural differences between the way we are in America versus how they are in China. Because in China, it used to be that you would have to put 30% down. And in that case, it was literally impossible for young people to buy houses, in which case they would dip into the 6 wallets philosophy, which in China essentially states that when purchasing property, you're going to get help from your parents, grandparents, and if you're partnered, your partner's parents and your partner's grandparents. This is because real estate in China is used as a generational store of wealth, And it did come with the expectation that the parent would be taken care of by the child in old age. They also hate credit, and they don't borrow nearly as much as we do. They are not anywhere near as over-leveraged as we are. According to CNBC a couple of months ago, the current residential mortgage rates in China are at 3.5%. So we're going to use that to calculate a 30-year mortgage with the balance of the loan after the 15% is put down. That's going to be up here. So their monthly mortgage payment is going to be $531.03 per month, and represented as a percentage of their income, that's going to occupy 39.5% of their overall income. If you're a homeowner in America and you feel like getting pissed off, go ahead and look at your amortization statement. Just as an aside, the American mortgage. The American mortgage, after the down payment, at the current rate, which this put in automatically at 5.98% over 30 years, factoring in PMI, insurance, and taxes, assuming none of that goes up, that monthly payment is $3,169.29, which occupies 65.44% of an American worker's salary. Let that sink in. Anyone still watching at this point, let me just say, I love you. Thank you for your attention span. This shit it's dense. But we're going to talk next about utilities, because this part is one that's really going to piss Americans off as it relates to American capitalism versus the hybrid model they have in China. Because if we weren't being extorted and constantly bled dry for every fucking penny we have, we could also enjoy comparable utility payments to those in China, which per month, they pay on average $77.27 a month for high-speed internet, cell phone, water, and electric. This is what happens when corporations don't own public utilities. The average American spends $611 on utilities between all the services that I just listed in China, plus the additional streaming services and stuff that we pay for here in America. Factoring that into our monthly costs, in China, they're paying on average $608.30 a month for all of their housing and utilities, which represents 45% of their income. And in America, drum roll please, we are spending $3,780.29 on average per month for everything I just listed, and that represents 78.06% of our monthly income. So let's talk about what it costs once your mortgage is paid off. What are we paying in America versus what they're paying in China per month after we pay our mortgages off? In China, they pay nothing except for utilities. So that's going to be a whopping $77.27. In America, the sweet freedom of that ownership is still going to cost you $1,027.67 a month, and that's assuming that your taxes don't go up, which they will, and your insurance won't go up, which it will. By the time you and your Chinese counterpart finish paying off your mortgages, your Chinese counterpart will have paid 61.6% of their principal balance and interest, which represents a little under $73,000. You, as an American, due to our predatory lending policies, you're going to pay 115% of the principal balance. Just under $500,000, just because they gave you the loan. After 70 years, our Chinese counterpart will have spent just under $212,000, whereas the average American will have spent over $1.4 million. And for those of you who are saying that, well, that's a lease, it's not ownership, I'm going to challenge you. Are you going to spend $1.2 million to claim ownership on land that requires an annual subscription fee of your taxes? And if yes, stay tuned for the next one, because we're going to dive into that.